Welcome to the Lost and Found in the Philippines podcast. Get ready for a fun and wild ride as we explore finding love in the Philippines. Join your host as he shares his experience from 7 nearly month-long visits. He will cover what to know before you go and how to get prepared for your trip. You will also get some tips to help you think through what type of person you hope to meet and how to find them. Let's get ready to get lost and found in the Philippines. Here is your host, Trevor Williams.
Hey, it's Trevor. I'm going to do an overview of the K-1 visa process and a quick overview of the other possible options of bringing someone over here from the Philippines. What I will do in a future episode after I have my surgery, I will have a detailed companion video on the Lost and Found in the Philippines YouTube channel so that anyone can follow along and actually see the paperwork. We'll go over, and if there are any questions, feel free to comment on the video and I will respond. You're probably thinking, Trevor, YouTube has the comments blocked on your videos. How are we going to leave comments if everything's blocked? Well, I've thought about that, and I'm going to be adding the Lost and Found in the Philippines channel to a site called Rumble, and I will be allowed to have comments on my videos there. So if anyone wants to interact and ask questions and talk to each other, feel free to go to Rumble. I will be leaving the link in the description of this podcast. My responses is exactly that in itself. It is not legal advice. I'm not an attorney. Most of the forms are pretty self-explanatory, but some questions can be confusing or not exactly clear to some. As soon as I have the video done, I will include the link in the description of this podcast. I plan on making it as in-depth as possible for the most simplest case basis. What is a K-1 visa? K-1 visa, or better known as fiancé visa, is an option on petitioning a U.S. citizen's fiancé to be allowed to enter into the United States. Let me just say this, there is not really an easy way to do any of this. It all takes time and money. I also want to point out, I was making about $12 an hour when I did this the first time, so not a lot in today's standards. If you have more money than you need, by all means, get an attorney if you don't want to do the work. But I will tell you, when I first went through this process, I felt worried and concerned, and I didn't want to mess up, so I put $600 down to hire an attorney. And then it was like $200 a month for about 6 months, and that was one of the cheapest I could find back in 2011. It is not cheap to go the attorney route. But based on your circumstances, if you have a lot going on and you've been married before, you might just prefer an attorney. But that is why I am here for those of you that don't have a lot going on in their history. When it comes to being married or being in trouble with the law, having no criminal history is obviously the best way, as they do extensively review past run-ins with the law. For me, I had my own run-in with the law, and that was consisting of a DUI back in August of 2004. I spent the night in jail, and then did a 3-day drug rehab, and had 2 years of probation, and had to check in with a probation officer. Needless to say, I more than learned my lesson, and that didn't affect my petition. But if you have anything relating to domestic violence, contested or not, you most likely will need an attorney to help you. But let's just hope all my listeners and viewers out there have never had to deal with any of that. But anyway, before anyone can ever petition someone, they have to have met them within the past 2 years and have to have proof, such as photos together, maybe plane tickets with each name on them if they went somewhere together. It seems since 2011 the process has been made easier. Maybe it's just me. Another that is needed is proof of having an ongoing relationship. You could get signed affidavits from friends and or family that can confirm that the relationship is legit. Other things that would work, such as ongoing chat conversations that can be printed out. Every piece of conversation is not needed, but you could start from when the relationship started and print 1 page of just starting to get to know each other, and then if you talk every day, then skip a few weeks and print another page of conversation. And then keep doing that, maybe have 10 to 15 pages of chat. You've been in constant communication and everything will be fine. I think the first time I did it, I sent my attorney like 30 pages front and back. And he said that is a little excessive and they don't need that much. With the K-1 visa, you would file the form called I-129F. That is the petition for alien fiancé. As I said before, on the companion video I will make for you, I will show you the form and how to fill out everything the best of my ability. I am not an attorney, but I've done this personally a few times, and the first time I used an attorney. And since then, I have had no issues for the most part when I've done it by myself. Once the I-129F is filled out, a cover letter will need to be created. Again, I will show you this in the video. First, include what is being petitioned for. In this case, it would be for the I-129F, and after that, list the contents of what is in this package that is being sent. Within the packet, original statements from both the U.S. citizen and foreign fiancé stating the intention of marrying. Marrying? I must remind you that the K-1 visa, if nobody's seen 90 Day Fiancé, the two people have 90 days from the day that he or she sets foot in the United States to get married, or else they will be deported back to their home country. Surprise! Talk about taking a leap of faith. That's why I say someone has to really feel it and know that it will work, and both will go into this with the best of intentions and have the strongest love possible, as well as faith that they can work through anything. Trust me. If anyone has ever talked to a Filipina or met one, you will know. Just try to gauge their feelings and make sure it's at least equal. As I have said before, a true Filipina has the mindset with her upbringing that it is their responsibility to make and keep their man happy, especially if they are married. As soon as you have both statements included, and then include what we discussed earlier about the printing of the conversations, as well as including the photos and receipts of whatever was done when together. Next, one passport type photo of the U.S. citizen, and you will want to write the full name on the back, as well as one passport type photo of the foreign fiance, as well as the full name on the back as well. The last time I did this, I just put the photos in their own Ziploc bag, attached it to a piece of paper with a paper clip. It's a good idea to label the bag, such as photo of fiance name and photo of U.S. citizen name. They ask you to send a copy of the U.S. citizen's birth certificate or a copy of all pages of their passport issued with at least a validity of 5 years, or a copy of the U.S. citizen's naturalization certificate front and back. If you have no idea what that is, then it doesn't relate to you. It's just a way to establish citizenship. Then, if the U.S. citizen has been married before, they would need to include a copy of the final divorce decree. But if that marriage ended due to the death of the spouse, then a copy of the death certificate would be sufficient. Finally, the last step of this portion of the process, the fee. As of this podcast, the filing for the I-129F is $535. You might wonder, that $535 is for the fiance. What if she has a kid or kids? As of the date of this podcast, there is no extra fee at this point in the process. There will be when it comes to the medical exam and interview, but there is always the option if the fiance wants to come to the United States and then advise the embassy her child or children will come at a later time, but within 1 year of the issuance of the K-1 visa. That would then save some money this time around. All that would be paid is for the fiance's part. Also, that is a good idea for someone who wants to get situated and go through the transition first, and that way they can have their child or children be better prepared. Alright, where was I? Once everything is in the packet for the visa, it's optional of including on top of everything what is called an e-notification form, or G1145. That is filled out with a phone number and or email address. And they will text or email you when they receive the packet. There is one thing that needs to be done at this point before you send that out. Make a copy of every single thing that is about to be sent. That will be needed later to be sent to the fiance in the Philippines. Next, just mail that off to the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, or USCIS, and once they receive it, the USCIS will send out what is called an NOA-1, Notice of Action 1. That will just confirm the date they received it and give a receipt number that you will be able to track the progress. That's that. Nothing else to do. go have a drink and settle in for the long wait. Before COVID, it was actually taking 6 to 8 months. Now it's gotten longer. We're gonna take a quick break. Hey, it's Trevor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's not a lot in this world that's free, and it's how I run my podcast. I use Anchor. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. So easy. Anchor will even distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many, many more. My podcast is actually heard on 7 different platforms, so it really helps, and I don't have to do any work. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Trust me, I did not go into this trying to make money. It's a hobby, and if you do the research, unless you have a lot of followers, you're not going to make hardly anything. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Go ahead and download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Who knows? You could end up having a bigger fan base than me. From my recent research, it's taking some almost a minimum of 8 to 10 months, and in some cases, possibly longer. You are looking at the possibility of one of 3 outcomes. First, and most important response would be, the petition has been approved. Second, and not that extreme response, would be RFE, which stands for Return for Evidence. What that means is that they are requesting more information or evidence. The first time I did this myself without a lawyer, I actually did get an RFE, but that was due to my mistake. While I was in the Philippines, I got what I thought was the correct size photos, since passport photos are so cheap there, like just around $2 in our money, or at least that's what it was at the time. I think they just selected the wrong size, because I specifically asked for passport size photos. An RFE could be as easily like mine with passport photos being the wrong size. And then all that would be done is get a new passport photo and then send it back to them, and that could delay the process maybe a month or even less, based on how long it takes to get the information they're requesting. RFEs are not the end of the world. The third and final worst response, your petition was denied. At that point, you would have to file an appeal within 30 days and use Form I-290B as in boy. But you might as well write a letter of withdrawal than file again. The reason I say this is because the filing fee for the I-290B is $675. It's a little cheaper just to refile, but this time if you were to get denied, I would recommend on getting a free consultation with an attorney to help you with the next steps and your possible options. There would have to be a very good reason they would deny the U.S. citizen or foreign fiancé. According to rapidvisa.com, the top 3 common reasons they deny the visa petition would be number 1, insufficient evidence of bona fide relationship. And that could have raised concern if there was a huge age difference, different religion, no common spoken language, or very little physical time together. Number 2, fraud via misrepresentation. Some examples of that would be if they discover any part of the photos together have been photoshopped or are fake and can include falsified affidavits from friends and or family. Inconsistencies between application and evidence, falsifying income, not disclosing medical or criminal history. Number 3, unqualified. Examples, 2-year meeting requirement if it's been longer than 2 years since the last time physically together, or income requirement is not met or the numbers just don't add up via the evidence and the income requirements can't be met. And lastly, free to marry requirement. You cannot be in the process of a divorce. Both parties have to be 100% not married. But fingers crossed, everything will be perfectly fine and the response will be approved. Once that happens, they will forward that to the Department of State's National Visa Center, otherwise known as NVC. According to the USCIS.gov official website, quote, "This decision the USCIS gave does not give the foreign fiancé permission to travel to the U.S. and does not guarantee that the Department of State will issue the K-1 visa," end quote. It is for the most part all downhill from here. The NVC issues a case number for the Philippines. It starts with MNL, and from there they forward the petition to the embassy in Manila. Also, the NVC will notify the U.S. citizen when they can go ahead and have the foreign fiancé apply for the visa. I know you're probably thinking, I thought that's what I just did with that whole packet of information. That was asking for the permission and opportunity to apply for the visa. Now the fiancé has to apply for the actual visa. The process for this part is the fiancé would have to get online and fill out what is called Form DS-160. This is where they would pay a $265 visa fee. At this point is where I mentioned about if they had a child and wanted to bring them with them when they came. It would be $265 per child. The Department of State would do further checks such as fingerprint and other background checks. It used to just take almost a month from the time USCIS approves and sends off to NVC, and then they send it off to the embassy. Once they notify the U.S. citizen the fiancé can apply, that is when the medical exam and visa interview can be scheduled as well as the fee paid. The fee for the medical exam is 17,025 pesos. Or when you convert it to what the exchange rate is right now would be $352.75 for the fiancé. And if they have kids, it's the same price as that for 15 years and older. And only 9,583 pesos, which is $198.55 currently for less than 15 years of age. The fiancé will have specific things they need to collect. The embassy will send them a letter notifying what to gather and bring. Again, I will include a copy in the companion video as well as a working flowchart of the medical exam process. When scheduling the exam and interview, give it at least a week in between, but I feel with the COVID-19 virus, there might be a decent enough gap in between as it is. If there could be only one piece of advice to give, that would be go to www.visajourney.com and create an account. If you ever need help and still don't want or have the money for a lawyer, they have the most exceptional message board, and they're usually very quick to respond and help you out the best way they know how. Who knows, you might even see me on there. But if you want to message me first, and I might be able to help you out faster, as I always have notifications on everything, I am notified right away. Regarding the medical and interview, it is highly advisable, if possible, put the fiancé in an Airbnb or hotel close to St. Luke's Medical Center in Manila, and possibly the same the night before the visa interview to make it easier on transportation, as they will be getting up possibly as early as 3 or 4 a.m. just to make sure they get in. As the website for St. Luke says, quote, "All applicants will be served on a first-come, first-served basis on their preferred visa medical date," end quote. But I do want to mention, the website also states, and I quote, "As we are limiting the number of visa medicals performed per day to ensure proper physical distancing in the clinic, all applicants must register online to set an appointment," end quote. Make sure they eat before going in the building, for they do not allow food on the premises. When everything is done with the exam, they will give a paper that shows what vaccines were given and a CD that has x-rays and such on it. And the fiancé will need to hold on to that for the remainder of the journey. When it finally comes to the most important part, the interview, they are not allowed to bring anything such as bags, purses, electronic devices such as a cell phone into the U.S. Embassy. Personal experience of my first fiancé told me that she had some women coming out crying as they were denied, and they were just devastated. Nobody knows except for the individual as to why they were denied, but it's very possible the person they interviewed with noticed red flags while they were looking at the paperwork or when they were asking questions. If you go in there and act like you don't know your fiance, that's definitely not going to get you approved. You overall just have to be confident and polite and be very friendly. As the U.S. citizen encourages them that everything will be fine, and just tell them to be themselves during the question asking. Final thoughts for the fiance about to interview? Don't be scared. Everything will be fine. They just want to see for themselves that you're sincere and that you're truly in love. Just have confidence, as I said, in your love, and that will help you get through it. They might possibly ask such questions as how you met, what you liked about each other, what did you do when you first saw each other in person. Before you leave the embassy, you will know if you were approved or denied. The past few times I've done it, I've always gotten approved, and from what my past 2 fiancés have said about the questions, it was never anything extreme, but there again, there's a first time for everything. As long as you're legit, you should be fine. Let's just stay positive, all right? We're going to take one last quick break. Once they approve the fiancé visa, they normally say good luck and wish them well. And then from there, it's just waiting for the actual K-1 visa to be personally delivered. It used to be roughly about 1 week from the day of the interview, based on what part of the Philippines the fiancé lives in. It could take a little longer. Once that is in hand, it's completely open when to leave the country and make the way into the United States of America. With the K-1 visa, there will be an envelope. No matter what, do not open that. I'm thinking it says that on the envelope itself. That envelope is given to immigration when they land in the U.S. As soon as they stamp the fiancé's passport, the timer officially starts. 90 days to get married, or they get to go through the deportation process. It's a very stressful time, as you might need to watch the first season of 90 Day Fiancé. And keep in mind, the producers of the show tried to add drama and chaos, as per my interview with Lewis in episode 3 of my podcast. When finally married, the K-1 visa process is complete, and now it's time for the next step. Form I-485 needs to be filled out. Form I-485 is application to register permanent residence, or what used to be called adjustment of status. This form will request them to issue a 2-year green card, and there is a process that you have to complete 90 days before that 2-year green card expires, or else permanent resident status will be lost. The I-485 form has the biggest fee you will ever pay. And lastly, this is the last fee that has to be paid until the green card needs to be renewed. And that fee is $1,140 plus an $85 service fee. Unless the fiancé has a child or children, someone who is filing for the I-485 should also file 2 other forms, and thankfully those do not have any fees included, as long as you mail them with the I-485. Those forms would be the I-765 and the I-131. The I-131 allows someone living in the U.S. while awaiting their green card to travel abroad without nullifying their green card application. As for the I-765 is an application for employment authorization. To request employment authorization and an employment authorization document, or otherwise known as EAD, it's pretty much a work permit to allow you to work while waiting for the green card. That just about does it for the process of K-1 visa, fiancé visa. As I had mentioned before, I will be putting together a companion video on the YouTube channel that shows you all the forms and important documents that might be helpful if someone is considering this option. For those of you who don't want to wait 8 to 10 months, there is always the option to fly over there, that is when foreigners are allowed back in the Philippines, and get married. As always, there is a process with that too. There is a waiting period to get a marriage license, and you have to do additional tasks while there. As I said, nothing easy about doing any of this. The reason anyone does it is because they can't see their lives with anyone else but that amazingly beautiful or maganda individual. Once married, then you could proceed, and that option is a spousal visa, which could also be known as a CR1 or IR1. CR1 stands for conditional resident and IR1 is immediate relative. The difference on that is CR1 is for a couple who has been married less than 2 years. IR1 is for couples who've been married longer than 2 years. I will briefly explain the process and the cost and the length of time. With a CR1 IR1, the U.S. citizen would file Form I-130 petition and other required materials, as well as the $535 filing fee. The processing time for a spousal visa can take anywhere from 13 to 17 months, possibly sooner in some circumstances. Once approved, similar to the K-1 visa, it is then forwarded to the NVC and they assign you a case number and again forward your paperwork to the U.S. Embassy in the Philippines. A green card application, which is that Form I-485, needs to be filed with NVC, along with DS-260, which is called Immigrant Visa and Alien Registration Application. Don't forget the filing fee of $445. The spouse attends an interview as you would expect and presents any documents that is requested. If approved, the spouse gets a visa stamp in their passport that allows them to travel to the U.S. At that time, an immigrant fee of $220 will be needed to be paid to the USCIS online after the visa has been picked up, but before departing to the United States. The spouse becomes a U.S. permanent resident as soon as they land. Roughly about 2 or 3 weeks later, the green card is mailed to the couple's address on file. Some might ask, Trevor, why did you choose K-1 visa instead of the spousal visa? Well, to be completely honest, I really thought about that, and usually when I did the research back then, and even now when I think about doing it again, I think about the fact you need at least 3 weeks stay in the Philippines to make sure you get everything completed, especially since it usually takes 2 weeks for the marriage license to be released. So if someone tried to get married in 3 weeks, it could feel kind of rushed, as in that last week you have maybe 5 days to get everything else taken care of, and I really don't like to be rushed like that. Even though it would be cheaper, and the fact that she would immediately become a U.S. resident as soon as she lands in the U.S. I truly hate the fact that the time frame being apart could be twice as long as doing the K-1 visa. I know it's more expensive, but not missing out on that time of being together is worth more than money to me. So that's why I've always done the K-1 visa. It's all your personal preference and what works for you the best. Street vendors in the Philippines. You get offered a variety of knockoff merchandise such as Cialis, Viagra, name brand shoes, Rolex, and other name brand watches, name brand cologne, and cell phones at extremely discounted prices. They've had Samsung phones, they have iPhones. But remember, knockoffs, not the real thing. I've tried on numerous shoes and they were just too small. I wear size 13 and a lot of people in the Philippines do not have that big of feet. I bought a few Rolex watches, and even though they were not the real thing, they look very fancy and they work for the most part. The cologne is amazing, and I've tested the real versions here in the States, and they smell the same, and every time I've gone over there, I've always grabbed a few bottles for half the price of what they are here. When it comes to the cell phones, I was not too thrilled and will never buy another fake Samsung phone again. But if you have had one that works or worked fine, then that's great. The one reason I am bringing this topic up is the whole basis of this story. On one of my few trips to the Philippines, I had bought a few flashlights that had a built-in laser pointer, as well as a built-in taser, and I bought 2 of them and brought them home, no problem. The next trip after that, I had bought 6 of them, and was going to give them to friends and family members as Christmas presents. But there was only one thing that I had not thought of. That trip, I had not gotten a complete flight from Columbus, Ohio to Philippines and back again. I actually drove to Dayton, Ohio, flew up to Toronto, Canada, and flew out of there. So when it was time to return home, I flew from Manila back to Toronto, and that's where everything just got extremely intense. I wish now that I wouldn't have been so naive, but I figured since I've done it before, there's nothing to worry about. Upon getting off the plane and grabbing my luggage and heading out, just so happened I got selected as surprise luggage check before I left the airport. They ushered me to follow them down this other corridor, and mind you, I was not sure what was going on. I was not even thinking about my 6 flashlights until they grabbed one of my pieces of luggage and picked it up and put it on the table, and then asked me if there was anything sharp or dangerous that he should know about before he opens it. And I said, I have a taser. And he then asked me how many. And I said 6. And he said in a very shocked voice, Jesus Christ. My heart dropped out of my chest and I started getting extremely nervous as to not knowing what was about to happen. As he collected the flashlights and put them to the side, I apologized profusely. And I started sweating, and I told him I was stupid and I bought them off a street vendor and actually forgot all about them. He continued to go through my luggage and he saw that I had a laptop, and he asked if there was any child pornography on the laptop. And I said absolutely not, and he had me turn it on, and he pretty much went through it very briefly. He showed the security guy next to him and his eyes got really wide, and so he went to go speak to his boss. Another security guy came over and started talking to me, and I told him I never thought twice about it, and I had done it before and had no issues. He said, so you think it's okay to bring 6 possibly dangerous weapons into a foreign country? He said, normally in this case, you should be getting arrested right now. And that just really scared the crap out of me. The other guy walked back over to me after speaking to his boss, and he started going over what normally happens, and that consisted of me being arrested, and from there I would have charges pressed against me, and I would be literally banned from ever being able to step foot back into Canada ever again. This guy was a big burly guy, and he was very intimidating. I still just kept apologizing and telling him I should have known better, and he told me next time you think about buying something from a street vendor, research if it's allowed to be brought back into the country or illegal. He said most likely the ones I bought previously and brought back to the US that I was lucky, and I could have gotten into trouble there as well. I kept expecting him to tell me to put my hands behind my back, but surprisingly he said, put all your stuff back in your luggage and get the hell out of here. Instead of constantly apologizing, I started to constantly thank him and said, God bless you. My fun-filled night was not over just yet. As always, my luck. Let me tell you, I landed in Toronto at around 8 p.m. and by the time I went through all the interrogation, it was almost 11 p.m. I had a car reservation with Hertz, and I went to go pick it up, and they wouldn't accept my debit card. When I was advised when I made the reservation, they accepted at that location. So I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I am stuck in Canada and I've already had the day from hell and I didn't know what to do. So I started going to the different rental car agencies and nobody had a rental car that allowed to be dropped off in the United States. So without any option, I needed a ride no matter what. It was either get a ride to a hotel and the following morning be in the same exact position. Without having enough money to get a plane ticket to Ohio, I was completely stranded. Dollar Rental is where I went next and just told them I need to rent a car and said I need to take a quick trip to Columbus, Ohio. I never said anything about where I was returning it and they got me into a car. What was most difficult as I have never rented a car that the speedometer was in kilometers and not miles per hour. And that was somewhat complicated to drive and not really know how fast I was driving, at least when I got into the United States. It was alright when I was driving in Canada. I opened my Waze app on my phone and use that to try to base my speed limit. For those of you who do not know what Waze is, W-A-Z-E, it's an amazing app that gives you your speed as well as lets you report if there's police anywhere. And it also shows you usually where there are police so you can avoid speed traps. Very rarely do I see a cop that is not shown on the app. Others are very vigilant on making sure they report it. Arriving home, I waited till the following night when the car rental place in the airport was closed and dropped the car off. A few weeks later, I had not heard anything, so I felt everything was fine, but I was wrong. Maybe 7 or 8 months later, my debit card was charged $3,750 by Hertz, which I learned that is who owns Dollar Rental Car Company. As it turns out, it was a glitch on their end, and someone had not checked the car back in for that period of time. So when they finally did check it back into the system, their system thought I had kept the car for that long and instantly charged me, and I had immediately called them to see what the hell was going on, and they said they would investigate. Within 24 to 48 hours, the charge was reversed, but I had never got a call back on it or anything. But for the fact that I took their car and left it in a US airport and I never got any type of an actual charge for doing that, I just let it go and went on with my life. I've decided to create a new segment. How often I do it is all determined by you, my audience. As long as enough Philippine questions keep getting sent to me, I will always be answering them. So here we go with the first question. What are the major airports? There is a total of about 70 airports in all of the Philippines. The main big ones you can fly into are Ninoy Aquino International Airport, which is in the capital of Manila. It is named after the late Senator Ninoy Aquino Jr., who was assassinated in 1983 at the airport itself. There are 4 terminals, but they are completely separated from each other. You have to get transportation to each one. They are not within walking distance from each other, unless you have some time to kill. Terminal 1 is the main terminal for the majority of international flights, and was the first one I have ever been to. It's pretty big and usually very crowded. Terminal 2 is more or less a mix of domestic and international flights. Terminal 3 is usually the airport I normally land when first arriving, or at least I try to get that airline that lands there. Terminal 4 is main domestic terminal. My favorite actual terminal is Terminal 3 because it's more open and they seem to get people through security more quickly. Other than Manila, you have Clark International Airport, which is about 1.5 hours or 40 miles northwest of Manila, close to Angeles City. Clark used to be known as Clark Air Base, where they had the United States and Philippine Air Force stationed there. The US left there in 1991. There is still a small portion of the Philippine Air Force that still occupies part of the area. Other airports you could fly into from international locations would consist of the following: Mactan Cebu International Airport, based out of Cebu; Francisco Bangoy International Airport, based out of Davao City in Mindanao, and that is the busiest airport in Mindanao. The second international airport in Mindanao would be General Santos International Airport. Iloilo International Airport is based out of Iloilo, one of the many islands right above Mindanao. Kalibo International Airport, which is on the same island as Iloilo, but on the northwest tip, compared to Iloilo being on the southwest corner. I have only been to Kalibo Airport maybe 2 or 3 times max, and the only reason I went there was when I first went to Boracay, as that is one of the cheaper airports to fly into. But later I learned I can fly into Caticlan Airport and be 5 minutes drive to the port to board a boat to go to Boracay. But when you go to Kalibo Airport, you're taking a bus for about an hour or so to get to the port. But like I said, flights are normally cheaper to fly into Kalibo. You just have to decide, is saving money better than being there quicker or having to ride a bus or van for about an hour? The choice is yours. Next airport would be Laog International Airport, and that is at the northernmost part of the Philippines in Luzon. I'm not 100% sure I pronounced that airport correctly. This area is the most coolest temperatures you're going to find over there. Temperatures range from 67 degrees as an average low, and average high would be 93 degrees, and this is in Fahrenheit, all depending on the time of the year. We just have 4 more airports to go. Bohol Panglao International Airport, located in Bohol. Again, not quite sure if I pronounced that correctly. This airport is on the island that is home of the Tarsiers and the Chocolate Hills. Another airport I've been to. Never had any issues with any airports over there. Everyone is extremely friendly. Puerto Princesa International Airport is located in Palawan. Palawan is home to the Underground River, among other things. And for a 5.5 to 8 hour bus or van ride for roughly $8.50, you can go check out El Nido, one of the places I still plan on visiting at some point in the future. Subic Bay International Airport is located about 2 hours and 20 minutes west of Manila, but there is no direct route. You have to almost go towards Angeles City, where Clark Airport is, and then go southwest to get there. This is exactly where Subic Bay Naval Base was up until November of 1992. Last but not least, Zamboanga is the final international airport. Not sure if I pronounced that right. And for foreigners, it's probably the least safest airport for us to travel into. I say this due to the fact that it is very close to Abu Sayyaf territory. Abu Sayyaf is similar to ISIS, a terrorist organization that is based around Sulu, and that is the immediate vicinity of Zamboanga Airport. Next question. Do they have Western food in the Philippines? Of course they do. I have been still looking for a Taco Bell. I've heard they do have them, but I have yet to go to one. As I was just looking this up, I noticed they do have one at a mall I've been to. But that trip was my first trip to the Philippines, and that was probably the last thing I was thinking of. They have all types of American food places over there, such as McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, Denny's, KFC, TGI Fridays, Chili's, Kenny Rogers Roosters, Texas Roadhouse, Buffalo Wild Wings, Starbucks. I think every place has those. Outback Steakhouse, Seattle's Best Coffee, Shake Shack, and Hard Rock Cafe. And that's all the ones I can think of off the top of my head that I've personally seen during my travels there. But probably a few others are there as well. Next question. How long can I stay in the Philippines? The max you can stay is 59 days. If you plan to stay longer than that, I would highly recommend, if that's your plan from the beginning, as soon as you land, speak to someone in immigration and get it taken care of right away. Last I heard, every month extension you want, it would be 500 pesos, which is a little over $10 with today's currency exchange rate. And if you want to go for every 2-month extension, it is just double the monthly. Plus there's a 300 peso application fee, which is around $6, as well as an alien certificate of registration fee of another 500 pesos, and an express fee of 1,000 pesos, certificate of exemption fee of 200 pesos, legal research fee of 50 pesos, and last, a visa sticker fee of 100 pesos. So we are looking at a grand total of 3,150 pesos, or roughly $65.29 for every month, and 3,650 pesos, or $75.66 for every 2-month extension. And I verified this with the Bureau of Immigration of the Philippines website. I must also point out, a round-trip ticket is always required. One-way tickets to the Philippines are not allowed. And with that, we are going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. What's different about dating in the Philippines? I think I have mentioned this in the past. The women seem not as shallow and seem to be so much more appreciative than American women. Don't get me wrong, you can find Filipinas that have similarities with American women, but normally that's not the case. From my experiences with both cultures, Filipinas are so much more affectionate and loving and willing to do so much to bring you happiness, and that is why, to me, I am no longer attracted or interested in women here in the United States. I do have moments to where I see a very pretty woman, but reality hits me and I remember I'm in the United States and most women here in the States only want the most attractive guy and a lot of money for most. In the Philippines, most women want a loyal, honest, loving, caring guy that will love them for the rest of their lives and never leave them. The people of the Philippines are the most simplest people I have ever met. I remember when I've had Filipino currency and coins and I gave someone on the street a 25 peso coin as that was the only thing I was carrying at the time. In our currency, that was about 50 cents, but to them it was so much more than that to them. They appreciate and are grateful for the smallest token of help from a stranger or foreigner for that matter. And unlike here in the US, once you give them something, they don't continue to hound you for more. They tell you salamat or thank you and leave you be. I've made so many homeless friends over there in the Philippines since I was going almost every 6 months, and they would still be there. And they would always remember me and come up to me and ask me how I've been, how I'm doing. They just show true compassion, regardless of what their lives are and what's going on with them. They care more about you. That is what the difference is in between dating in the Philippines. The people and the culture is the difference. I might have time to answer one more question. Let me go through here and see what question sounds like a good question. Okay, here we go. Is social media big over there? Which sites are most popular? I know that's 2 questions, but I'll take care of it. Yes, social media is big over there, as it is here in the States. As you would expect, Facebook, YouTube, WhatsApp, and Instagram are probably the top 4. They still use Skype, Pinterest, Viber, Snapchat, and TikTok. I've been asked in the past if I had Line. That's an app similar to WhatsApp and Viber. The people of the Philippines' use of social networking has become so extreme that the country has been tagged as the social networking capital of the world. On average, social media usage in the Philippines is about 4 hours every day. I've read that by 2025, about 90 million Filipinos will use social networking apps. If you remember a site called Friendster, I do vaguely, and I do recall I had a profile there. It was created, well, that site was introduced in 2002, and its popularity quickly disappeared in 2004 due to extreme technical and server issues. Instead of completely disappearing, it was ironic how it worked. It lost popularity with Americans, but as it was losing our interest and we were moving to MySpace, Friendster was gaining the interest of people in Southeast Asia, starting with the Philippines. According to an article on MediaShift.org quite a few years ago, quote, Friendster's director of engineering, Chris Lunt, says the Asian Friendster phenomenon seems to have started in the Philippines, where the site still enjoys amazing traffic. Lunt wondered why Friendster's web traffic was spiking in the middle of the night and noticed that the traffic was coming from the Philippines. According to Inc., he worked backwards, looking for patient zero, the first American who linked to a Filipino and found Carmen Lilani de Jesus, a marketing consultant and hypnotherapist in San Francisco. She connected to dozens of Filipinos, and eventually more than half the site's traffic was from Southeast Asia. Lunt's oh no moment was undoubtedly related to the fear that the Americanness of the network might be tainted by the massive influx of foreigners, and the fact that Filipino internet eyes are of little value to American advertisers who are looking for local consumers to whom they can sell their wares. The Filipino Friendster phenomenon might have started with one user, but what makes it so attractive to Filipino users? I asked prominent Filipino tech blogger Abe Olandris what he thought, and he told me it was all about timing. It was the first mover in social networking in the country. and before that, nothing came close to it, except for forums and message boards, he said. De Jesus, the American who helped bring Friendster to the Philippines, believes the service's popularity is due to the culture of friends helping friends in that country. I personally think that Friendster took off in the Philippines because that's a culture where friendship and who you know is sometimes a more valuable currency than money, she wrote on her blog. Basically, everyone has an uncle or a friend or a relative who can help you get what you need based on nepotism, favoritism, friendship, etc. Because not everyone has money. But if you do me a favor, I'll owe you a favor. This is why friendship is important and why a platform like Friendster, which was a friend collecting service, took off so rapidly in the Philippine culture, end quote. Unfortunately, Friendster closed up shop on June 14, 2015. The mere fact that the Philippines saved it from imminent doom in 2004, and it survived almost 11 more years, solely because of the people of the Philippines. Even Ms. De Jesus realized and understood that the culture of people over there see friendship as one of the most valuable assets than having actual money. Just astonishing, and I will always respect, defend, admire, and value the people of the Philippines. One more thing I want to say before signing off. We are now officially on iHeartRadio. All right, everyone. Stay safe. Stay healthy. God bless, and always remember, it may be fun in Vegas. It might be fun in Miami. It could even be more fun in Hawaii. But it will always be more fun in the Philippines.
Thanks for listening to Lost and Found in the Philippines. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss a single episode. If you like the show, leave a review and be sure to tell a friend. For even more, check out the Lost and Found in the Philippines YouTube channel.